My name is Matthew Besser, and I did my Bio 385 experiential learning at the SEMA4 qPCR COVID testing lab in Branford, Connecticut. Over winter break, I started working in a COVID-19 PCR testing lab as a lab assistant. As a lab assistant, I was limited to doing small tasks around the lab, but throughout my time there, I came to realize that the smallest details can be the most important. Every day, the lab would receive and process between 3,000 and 5,000 COVID swabs. Once the samples were processed into the computer, the RNA is extracted, amplified, and analyzed in order to determine the presence of the viral RNA. The extraction process was done using an automated pipetter, which would do batches of 96 samples at a time. One of my main jobs was uncapping and loading up the racks of samples in the hood to be brought to the pipetter. When the portion of the sample being tested was transferred to a different plate, the original test swab and vial had to be taken off the rack, recapped, and stored in a 4°C fridge. When I first started at the lab, I spent a lot of time doing uncapping and capping of samples. I found the experience to be very tedious, and I felt as though I was just doing busy work, so I started to look for other things to do around the lab. This is when I realized that my menial tasks were actually integral for the lab to run smoothly. The lab setting was analogous to the clinical hospital setting I hope to find myself in the future. Spending time to make sure that the lab surfaces and hoods were thoroughly sanitized became a regular occurrence. I would use the ethyl alcohol and bleach to thoroughly clean the hoods. It may seem simple, but it is a good habit to develop as a scientist or healthcare professional. After the samples have been extracted, they are capped and racked in a specific sequence so that they can be found again later if needed. This may seem simple, but it was a common occurrence for the samples to be racked incorrectly, which would lead to a wild search throughout the other racks. Once I had gained some experience doing the racking of the samples, I was tasked with pulling repeats. This consisted of locating initial samples that had yielded a low positive result or an inconclusive result, and they needed to be retested before the patient's results could be released. Pulling repeats made me contemplate how my job was directly impacting the patient. If a sample was being repeated, that means that it had been in the lab for many hours. This patient has been isolating and is probably nervous waiting on us to tell them their result. It was on me specifically to be on top of the results and pull the tests that needed to be repeated so that the patient could get the results as quickly as possible. I would have never thought twice about the lab running COVID tests until I worked in one. This experience made me appreciate how every step of the process has a direct impact on the patient health. When I'm in the shoes of the provider, this will give me further insight into how to interact with the lab. Working in the lab helped me develop and practice my sterile technique and work with actual virology samples. My job may have been very small, but in the end, the big job only gets done when a summation of little things get done. Thinking about doing 5,000 RNA extractions and amplifications may seem like a daunting task, but when you do the little things and do them well, it all gets done and it all falls into place. This is applicable directly to the patient care experience. My experience in the SEMA4 lab was a positive one, and I feel as though I was able to not only practically apply knowledge that I have gained in my studies at Quinnipiac, but also learn new things, including new lab techniques, and to learn more about RNA extraction. It was a very fulfilling experience to work on the front lines during a global pandemic, and know that my hard work was directly helping people. I am excited to do research in a lab setting similar to one of the many labs at SEMA4, so that I can help advance the forefront of knowledge in biology and just maybe discover the next big thing in healthcare biology research.